Once upon a time, in a quaint little town lived a couple, Sarah and Mark. They seemed like the perfect couple to everyone around them. They had the ideal house, well-behaved kids, and a social life that made others envious. Yet beneath this polished facade, secrets lurked in the shadows. Sarah had always been devoted to her husband. She believed in the sanctity of their marriage, but her life took an unexpected turn when she discovered Mark had been texting someone late at night. At first, she brushed it off, convinced that he was merely working late or talking to an old friend. However, her instincts began to stir, leading her to dig deeper. One rainy evening, as the storm rumbled outside, Sarah found herself alone after putting the kids to bed. With her heart racing, she took Mark's phone from the kitchen counter while he was taking a shower. As she scrolled through his messages, her heart sank. The texts were intimate, filled with flirty emojis, endearments, and plans for secret meetings. But what shattered her heart was the revelation that the woman was none other than her own mother, Linda. The realization hit her like a freight train. Sarah felt a storm of emotions, rage, betrayal, and utter humiliation. How could Mark do this to her? And her mother, her own flesh and blood, who should have been protecting her? Sarah clenched the phone tightly, her mind racing as she imagined the affair. Each message felt like a dagger stabbing into her chest, and the anger burned hotter with each passing moment. When Mark finally emerged from the shower, Sarah confronted him. The tension in the room was palpable. "Who is Linda to you?" she screamed, her voice echoing through their usually cozy home. Mark, initially taken aback, tried to feign innocence. "What are you talking about?" Sarah threw the phone on the table, the screen lighting up with damning evidence. "How could you betray me like this?" "With my mother." Mark's face paled. He realized the magnitude of his mistake. "Sarah, please, it's not what you think. I was going to end it. I never meant to hurt you." But Sarah couldn't bear the words. The anguish soon turned into a darker emotion. Vengeance. As Mark stumbled over his apologies, Sarah's mind spiraled into a plan. She felt trapped in a nightmare and decided that if no one could love her, she would ensure that no one hurt her again. Weeks passed, and while Sarah acted as if she was trying to mend things, she was secretly plotting. She began to lose weight. Her sleepless nights turned her thoughts into a fog of despair, but amidst the darkness, clarity emerged. Sarah had decided to kill Mark. She began to gather materials, a knife, a rope, and a heavy-duty trash liner. Her heart raced with anticipation and fear. Why should she let Mark live after what he'd done? The darkness within her began to whisper. This was the only way to free herself from the chains of betrayal and humiliation. The night of the murder arrived. Mark had gone out for drinks with friends, and Sarah waited anxiously, her heart pounding in her chest. As the clock struck midnight, she heard the door creak open. Mark stumbled through the doorway, laughter spilling out with him. He was clueless, blissful in his ignorance. Sarah confronted him yet again, but this time the words that came out of her lips were laced with poison. "Mark, do you think you can just fix this? Do you think I can forgive you?" Mark laughed, a distorted echo of his former self. "Come on, babe. Let's not make this a big deal." Sarah steeled herself, and in a moment of clarity filled with rage, she lunged for the knife she had hidden behind the couch. She managed to catch Mark off guard, and in a flurry of desperation and swing, she plunged the knife into his side. Mark gaped in shock, grappling with the realization of who had betrayed him. Blood seeped from the wound as he stumbled backward, collapsing onto the floor. Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing 1,000,000 miles a minute. The sense of finality washed over her, but it quickly turned to panic. What had she done? She quickly grabbed the trash liner and wrapped the body, her breath coming in quick gasps. In a frenzied blur, she cleaned up the scene, disposing of the evidence. It was a nightmare that she couldn't wake from, yet there was a twisted sense of relief. that followed her dark decision. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah managed to convince the world that everything was normal. But the town was shocked when Mark went missing. Friends began to question Sarah, and soon enough, the police became involved. They searched the town, but with no body found, the media buzzed with speculation. As the police honed in on her alibi, Sarah was a nervous wreck. The guilt weighed heavily on her conscience. It felt like she was living in a prison of her own making. Then, one day, her mother, Linda, appeared at her door, concerned about both Mark's disappearance and Sarah's well-being. The conversation was strained. Linda pressed Sarah, asking her if she knew anything. Caught in her web of lies and fraying at the edges, Sarah exploded. "You did this. You made me this way. I had no choice." Linda, horrified, tried to reason with her daughter, but Sarah's rage obscured all rationality. In a fit of anger, she revealed everything, a confession spilling from her lips. Before she knew it, she was holding the knife again, but this time it was aimed at her own heart. She felt trapped, taunted by her own conscience. After a tense moment, sirens began to echo in the distance. Linda had called the police out of fear for her daughter's mental state. As the officers burst in, apprehending Sarah, she finally felt an eerie calm blanket her mind. In the interrogation room, as Sarah sat handcuffed, she reflected on how love could twist into darkness and betrayal could lead to tragedy. She thought of her children, now motherless, facing a world without her. She was charged and ultimately pled guilty to manslaughter, receiving a lengthy sentence in prison. Years later, as she sat in her cell, Sarah lamented her choices. A love once pure was dissolved in a pool of greed, jealousy, and betrayal. She longed for the chance to reconcile with her children and sought forgiveness for the act that forever shattered her own world. In the end, what was meant to be a life filled with love turned into a haunting tale of sorrow, regret, and a reminder that betrayal could lead to the darkest of paths. Sarah's story served as a chilling warning that love, when turned on its head, could illuminate the shadows and bring forth the demons lurking within.